The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected. Tariff whiplash in Washington, the temporary reversal on goods coming from the U.S.'s neighbors and what that means for Americans. Dissecting DOGE, Elon Musk's authority now being questioned by Congress. The joint address that tipped the balance, and later fighting for life because of the flu. One father's warning to parents as cases rise nationwide. From the nation's capital, this is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. Thank you for joining us. On this weekend edition, we take a look at the big headlines of the week, and we look ahead at what to expect, starting with the four big stories we've been following this week. President Donald Trump delaying his tariff promise, the new deadline for Canada and Mexico. Meantime, the House votes to censor a Texas congressman for his behavior as Trump addressed Congress. Plus, aviation staying in the spotlight, how lawmakers are trying to prevent more tragedies in the air. And later, boycotting Target, the new push from consumers to challenge its removal of DEI initiatives. But first, President Trump signed executive actions suspending some tariffs on products from Mexico and Canada. Trump's order puts in place a nearly 1-month tariff delay until April 2nd on all products from both countries that are covered by the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Free Trade Agreement. He made that announcement following a call with Mexico's president and discussions with Canadian officials. A White House official said about half of imports from Mexico and more than a third from Canada are covered under the agreement. In a closed-door meeting, GOP senators told tech billionaire Elon Musk his moves to shrink the federal government will require congressional votes. This is President Trump's efforts to tackle government waste and fraud takes the nation by storm. It's been a key point of criticism for his political opponents. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins reports.
President Donald Trump's newly created Department of Government Efficiency.
DOGE. Perhaps you've heard of
it. Taking a prominent role in the first address of his second term to a joint session of Congress Tuesday evening, dedicating 8 minutes to DOGE's findings thus far.
$22 billion from HHS to provide free housing and cars for illegal aliens.
Listing 19 examples of what he has classified as government waste, fraud, and abuse.
$8 million for making mice transgender. This is real.
Elon Musk, the controversial mastermind behind DOGE, in attendance for Tuesday's speech.
Thank you, Elon.
And the opposition's response following the speech. Democratic Senator from Michigan, Alyssa Slotkin, hitting back, criticizing DOGE and Elon Musk.
Is there anyone in America who is comfortable with him and his gang of 20-year-olds using their own computer servers to poke through your tax returns, your health information, and your bank accounts? We need a more efficient government. You want to cut waste? I'll help you do it. But change doesn't need to be chaotic or make us less safe.
Meanwhile, conservatives in the House and Senate doubling down on their support for DOGE, pressuring Speaker Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune against compromising with Democrats by agreeing to add any DOGE restrictions to a spending bill currently being worked on to avoid a government shutdown by March 14th. President Trump promising DOGE is just getting started.
Taking back a lot of that money. We got it just in time. This is just the beginning.
And the Supreme Court Wednesday ruling against the Trump administration and their request to freeze $2 billion worth of payment for USAID. The case now sent back down to the lower courts to sort out how and when those payments should be made.
The House has censored Texas Congressman Al Green for disrupting President Trump's address to Congress Tuesday night.
Remove this gentleman from the chamber.
Green shouted at Trump after he claimed the November election results gave Republicans a governing mandate. Green yelled that Trump has no mandate to cut Medicaid. He says he was standing up for his constituents and would do it again.
What I did was from my heart. People are suffering.
Democrats note that Republicans took no action when members of their party interrupted former President Biden's speech last year. The Trump administration is getting ready to strike a significant blow to the Education Department, according to the Wall Street Journal, as the president looks to make good on his promise to return education to the states. National correspondent Matt Gelka takes a closer look.
An executive order abolishing the Department of Education is imminent, according to a new report from the Wall Street Journal. The outlet reports that a draft issues the directive to take all necessary steps to facilitate the closure of the Education Department based on the maximum extent appropriate and permitted by law. The push to close down the department is getting pushback from Democrats.
What you do want is an educated electorate, but not if you're Donald Trump and his cult-like members. They want citizens who are not educated.
But it's also been telegraphed since Trump was on the campaign trail.
I'm going to close the Department of Education and move education back to the states.
Dismantling the department also follows the blueprint that the controversial Project 2025 laid out. The plan calls for offices moving to other agencies, including the Office of Civil Rights going to the Justice Department, and moving the more than $1.6 trillion of student loans DOE manages over to the Treasury Department. Republicans have long backed a takedown of the Education Department, questioning the $268 billion spent for lackluster results.
When the Department of Education was first stood up, we were ranked #1 in the world globally in education, and today we rank 34th. And you think it's working?
Congress would need to act in order to fully unwind the department, and it's unknown if there are 60 votes to do it in the Senate. New Education Secretary Linda McMahon acknowledged lawmakers would need to play a role during her confirmation hearing.
If there is a movement to abolish the Department of Education, it has to go through the United States Congress.
Yes, it is set up by the United States Congress, and we work with Congress. It clearly cannot be shut down without it.
Turning to new details, American and Ukrainian officials are planning to meet next week in Saudi Arabia to discuss ceasefire efforts in the war with Russia. The news comes as the two sides work to repair the relationship after last week's Oval Office blow-up between Presidents Trump and Zelensky. The U.S. Special Envoy noted that Zelensky has apologized for the debacle. American asset management giant BlackRock has agreed to buy 2 ports at either end of the Panama Canal from Hong Kong. The $23 billion deal is an agreement in principle. C.K. Hutchinson's ownership had angered President Trump. Trump said several times during the lead up to his inauguration and since taking office, he intends to take back the Panama Canal from Panama. The chairman and CEO of the nation's largest grocery chain is resigning. Kroger says Rodney McMullen is stepping down after an investigation into his personal conduct was found to be inconsistent with the chain's business ethics policy. But the grocery giant says McMullen's conduct doesn't have to do with Kroger's finances, operations, reporting, or any Kroger associates. Board member Ronald Sargent will step into his role for the interim. The impact of artificial intelligence on its youngest users is yet to be fully understood, especially when it comes to their critical thinking skills. The Fact Check team's Janae Bowens has been digging into new research that shows how much, Janae, Generation Alpha is using AI. So let's start there. How many young children are using AI?
Yeah, Dee Dee, so nearly 1/3 of parents of kids ages 0 to 8 say their children have used AI for learning. Now, this is all according to a survey from Common Sense Media. They interviewed more than 1,500 parents with young children back in August.
And such an early introduction to technology, of course. Are parents concerned about their children's use of AI?
Well, sort of. So 75 to 80% of parents express concerns about screen media's impact, but 3/4 also recognize the potential for learning and connection. The CEO of Common Sense says this tension, balancing technology's risks with its benefits, defines the modern parenting experience. Now, 61% of parents said their kids' use of AI had no impact on their critical thinking skills.
That's a good way to put it, modern parenting. I'm also curious how AI could potentially impact teaching kids how to write. Yeah. Teachers have talked a lot about that. Janae, thank you. Janae will be back in a few moments to dig deeper into how children are using AI. From upgrades, staffing, and perks, next, what aviation experts told lawmakers needs to be done now to prevent future tragedies in the sky. And partnering with the world's largest semiconductor manufacturer, the new announcement from President Trump that'll revive chip manufacturing in the U.S. Improving air traffic control technology and addressing staffing shortages. Aviation industry leaders testified before the U.S. House Transportation Committee, urging lawmakers to take action to help prevent future tragedies in the sky. Each witness addressing long-standing issues within the aviation industry. The National News Desk, Jeff Harris, has more on some of the biggest problems identified.
Without a doubt, an outdated air traffic control system and staffing shortage were the main topics of discussion. Witnesses say thousands of air traffic controllers are needed and newer technology needs to be implemented in order to boost safety in the sky. 6 aviation industry leaders appeared before Congress on Tuesday, addressing long-standing issues within the industry, including outdated federal systems.
It's not acceptable for controllers and technicians to have to work with paper strips and floppy disks to operate the national airspace system in the United States.
Staffing shortages.
The development of the tech ops staffing model over the course of a decade has revealed a significant shortfall of at least 800 employees.
And modernizing the current air traffic control centers across the entire country.
Fort Worth, Seattle, Kansas City, Memphis, and Indianapolis, to name a few. They're between 59 and 64 years old.
Lawmakers expressing a desire to improve safety, but they did acknowledge budget constraints.
The agency is forced into the impossible predicament of having to dedicate vast amounts of money on simply sustaining old and outdated systems.
Mark Weinkrantz, a pilot with over 40 years of aviation experience in both the military and civilian sectors, tells us a lot of the aviation equipment being used right now is considered antiques at this point.
The pipeline to replace anything on an aircraft or on the ground takes a great deal of time.
Which is why he believes while hearings like the one today are beneficial, speeding to implement these upgrades could be dangerous.
Rushing any improvements or so-called improvements into place because it seems popular or makes sense might compromise the actual safety net that we have in place.
Now, Nick Daniels, president of the National Air Traffic Controllers Association, also expressed concern about how a potential government shutdown could cause significant setbacks, specifically when it comes to hiring and also training. I'm Jeff Harris reporting from Washington.
President Trump unveils a $100 billion investment in the U.S. by the world's biggest semiconductor manufacturer. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company produces chips for Apple, Intel, and NVIDIA. The company had already announced plans to invest more than $65 billion in the U.S., including 3 plants in Arizona. Trump says 5 new facilities will be built in Arizona thanks to this investment. It's part of ongoing efforts to revive chip manufacturing in the U.S. and get a leg up on China.
We must be able to build the chips and semiconductors that we need right here in American factories with American skill and American labor. And that's exactly what we're doing.
Trump says the investment is expected to create many thousands of high-paying jobs. Minnesota lawmakers are now working to block Nudify apps that use AI to make explicit images without consent. The bill would target companies running sites that allow people to upload a photo and transform it into explicit images or video. Most states have banned the dissemination of sexually explicit deepfakes or revenge porn, AI or not. But Minnesota's legislation would prevent the material from ever being created before it spreads online. Concerns over Amazon's new Alexa upgrade and warnings about a controversial new chatbot for teens, some experts say, has led to depression, anxiety, and now a suicide lawsuit. Our Jan Jeffcoat spoke to cybersecurity expert and privacy attorney Lisa Garber about the growing fears.
Great to see you, Jan.
Let's start with this Alexa Plus upgrade, which will use AI and have many more capabilities and be much more personalized. Tell us what we can expect with Alexa Plus and also your concerns about it.
Amazon has been developing Alexa Plus for quite some time. Remember, they're trying to battle with other tech companies that are competing for space in the personal assistant market. So we're talking about Google's Gemini and Apple Intelligence with Siri. But here we're looking at something that's going to be very conversational, very personalized. Amazon has said we want this to be a personal assistant, not a utility. And remember, there are over 500 million Amazon Alexa connected devices right now. And so what Amazon is hoping for is to capture the market in how people communicate and search for their preferences, book a hotel, plan a meal, plan a date, book anything. Amazon wants to be a part of that.
And it looks like they're getting really ahead of this, too. A warning this morning over a controversial AI chatbot built specifically for entertainment, role-playing, and so-called companionship that is very popular with teens. This is very, very alarming. It's called Character.ai, but parents need to be aware, you say, because some of the allegations right now include the fact that it causes depression, it causes anxiety, and in one case, it has led to a lawsuit now over a suicide. First, tell us how this chatbot works.
So there are a few chatbots in this market. They're really geared towards teens and people in their early 20s, but they're actually really popular with the tween set as well. Parents need to be hyper alert about Character.ai, about Replica, and they're not like a regular chatbot where you can perform research or plan a trip or have it book an itinerary or write a paper for you. This is really a conversational bot. So what it's doing is it offers an AI version of a celebrity, an athlete, even a character from television, or someone that the person creates. They can say, I want someone to be my girlfriend or boyfriend. I want them to act this way. I want them to speak this way. You can actually have the bot personalize the voice and the emotions it's conveying. The problem here is, if you think about it, adults might have problems separating the truth from reality.
Correct.
And here, this is not real. And actually, it's been shown already. The New York Times did an investigation on this. Adults are having trouble with falling in love with some of these bots. And it sounds ridiculous, but children are going to have a lot of trouble separating the truth here. And they're using it to practice conversations. They're using it for sometimes first sexual encounters. It's extremely disturbing.
That's so disturbing.
Thinking that they're thinking that they're forming a real relationship here.
Right. Again, this is very similar to catfishing when you think you're falling in love with somebody that you're not. A lawsuit, though, has now been connected to this because of a suicide. What happened here, and how are these companies being held accountable?
One of the problems, and there are actually multiple lawsuits, it's pretty frightening, is these platforms are having problems with moderation. So we've seen one lawsuit where an 11-year-old was conversing with one of these characters and was given hypersexualized conversations and tones and imagery. That's one of the lawsuits we've seen. We've also seen a lawsuit focusing on suicide where a 14-year-old was led into a mental depression spiral and actually committed suicide. And there are allegations that the chatbot said, this is what you should do. You can come join me if you commit suicide. And so kids are having a lot of trouble here. Parents should be hyper alert. And the problem is, were these rushed to market? What are the guidelines? Where are the moderation points for safety? And this is an ongoing debate with social media in general. But with artificial intelligence, you're seeing just the opportunities abound for malicious actors and for problems with the software in general.
And parents need to be aware. That's the most important thing. Just be educated in what's happening right now online with your kids. This is very frightening. All right,
And I do want to add one thing, Jan, if I can.
Yeah.
Please note that there are millions of kids using these platforms, and they are spending, the statistics show, over an hour and a half a day conversing with these bots. It's not a minor thing.
I was reading about the addiction issues from some of these kids online, and that alone right there is a huge issue. An hour and a half a day, that's a big problem, talking to somebody who's not real. All right, cybersecurity expert and privacy attorney Lisa Garber, we appreciate you joining us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up next, a 4-year-old in Ohio gets brain damage after contracting the flu. Her father breaks down the hours leading up to her hospital stay. Also, classroom chaos. Parents in Washington state outraged over concerns state lawmakers are trying to take away their parental rights. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. From a push for stronger gun rights in Florida to Washington state parents trying to protect their parental bill of rights. We're taking the pulse of America. But we start with a 4-year-old girl in Ohio with brain damage from the flu.
Every day I wake up to the nightmare.
The Bowler family's nightmare started 1 week ago.
We were doing everything that the doctor had said to do.
4-year-old Lachlan's life changed in an instant when sick with the flu.
She jumps up out of bed and runs towards the bathroom door. And next thing I know, I hear a thud. So I grab my flashlight on my phone and I look over and she's laying on the ground.
Her dad, Brad, says they rushed her to a hospital in Chillicothe.
They had to do 3 rounds of CPR on her before they finally got a pulse.
Then a crew life flighted her to Nationwide Children's Hospital.
They came in and told us that she had massive amounts of brain injuries. She'll never be able to walk again.
I feel this would make students safer. Students could rely on themselves for protection as opposed to someone else.
State Senator Randy Fine, a Republican from Melbourne Beach, says allowing faculty members and students to lawfully carry guns on college campuses and universities is an important step. Senator Fine introduced this bill that would authorize persons to carry firearms on the property of any college or university in Florida.
Here's what people need to understand. There is no magical force field that keeps guns off of our college and university campuses. Those who don't care about the law are already bringing guns onto college campuses. This simply allows those who follow the law to do the same.
Should guns be allowed on campus?
I think so, if they're in the hands of the right people.
This is a statement saying, we're watching you, and parents are not happy with you playing around with our parental rights.
Brian Haywood with Let's Go Washington is the original author of the Parents' Bill of Rights. He argues it's not only the law, but it also withstood a test in court and does not need to be altered.
I believe, and in our original bill, we state very clearly, parents are the primary stakeholders in raising of children.
The Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction did try to clean up some of the ambiguous language, but it's still not enough for the Washington Education Association and others who want this new bill to pass.
That essentially guts 2081. In fact, makes some things worse than they were before. To keep, and primarily it's keeping secrets from parents.
Coming up on the National News Desk, LeBron James breaking records, the new titles he's adding to his legendary career, and trying to get the president's face on your next $100 bill. The state pushing for newly designed currency. Taking a look at the top trending stories on our website right now. LeBron James is now the first NBA player to score 50,000 combined career points. He also won the Player of the Month award and is the oldest player to do so. A Texas congressman introduced an act to order all $100 bills to have President Donald Trump's portrait on them. The Golden Age Act would require any bills printed after 2028 to feature the portrait. And ginormous pet store goldfish have been found in Lake Erie. Look at this. Goldfish are invasive species and officials advise against letting them loose. Those stories and much more available right now at thenationaldesk.com. Driverless Uber rides are now available in Austin, Texas. Waymo cars can fit up to 4 passengers at no added cost. Uber users can adjust their rider preferences if they want the service. Uber plans to expand the driverless rides to Atlanta, Georgia this year. And popular weight loss drug companies now lowering prices, but it's still a steep price tag. Wegovy Novo Nordisk weight loss drug is now selling for $499 a month. Other companies like Eli Lilly have priced their starting dose at $349 a month. Eli Lilly's CEO says they now have more than 100,000 people using the drug, which is only expected to climb. Coming up next here, children relying on AI. Could their critical thinking skills be affected? We break down the new research. And later, weight loss drugs causing complications. The new concerns over eye health. You're watching the National News Desk, America's News Now. You can catch us live weekdays from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time, and anytime online at thenationaldesk.com. We'll be right back. The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected. A massive effort to roll back regulations, the changes the president is pushing and the impacts they could have. Plus, California's governor splits with Democrats on transgender athletes as he teases a 2028 campaign. Plus, new insight into what happened the night 4 University of Idaho students were killed. What unsealed text messages show between the 2 surviving roommates. From the nation's capital, this is the National News Desk, America's News. Now, I'm Dee Dee Gatton. A massive effort is underway in D.C. to roll back regulations. The National News Desk, Christine Frizzau, digs into the reasons behind the changes and the impact they could have.
President Donald Trump says on his watch, any one new regulation issued will mean 10 old ones must be cut.
So 1 for 10. And it's never been done before, and that'll have a big impact on regulation, getting rid of so many ridiculous regulations.
Already, his administration has targeted all rules related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, with a high priority as well on energy, rolling back regulations that restrict fossil fuel production, and reopening federal lands for drilling. Also working to undo mandates on renewable energy and electric vehicles, since the majority of parts for wind turbines, solar panels, and lithium-ion batteries are all made in China.
By mandating we use these products, it puts us into what we call Chinese handcuffs. We are voluntarily making ourselves dependent on China.
The White House insisting its regulation rollbacks have already saved $180 billion, or $2,100 for a family of 4, blaming the Biden administration for burdensome rules, like requiring increased staffing levels in nursing homes, already struggling to hire, which led to closures and far fewer beds for patients.
I mean, it could for some families. They may have to not be able to work. They may have to stay home to take care for their loved one that really requires 24-hour care.
But some worry the pendulum could swing too far in the other direction. Regulations, after all, are the reason we have safe food and baby formula and clean drinking water. With warnings, helping businesses grow and cut costs isn't always what's best.
If you dispose of your toxic waste, if you're a company owner, into the river for free, or you spew it in the air and you don't have to pay for kind of getting rid of it, who is paying the price? It's people breathing it in, it's people getting sick. It's maybe other companies that might want to use the clean water.
Finding the balance between too much and not enough regulation, once again front and center in Washington. I'm Christine Frizzau for the National News Desk.
Splitting with progressives, California Governor Gavin Newsom says he opposes trans athletes in women's sports, tackling the issue in the first episode of his new podcast.
Would you do something like that? Would you say no men in female sports?
Well, I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that. The way that people talk down to vulnerable communities is an issue that I have a hard time with as well. So both things I can hold in my hand.
Newsom was joined by conservative activist Charlie Kirk, who co-founded Turning Point USA. The governor has softened his stance towards President Trump in recent months and criticized Democrats' strategy. He also joked about a 2028 presidential run. A move to commemorate the 60th anniversary of Bloody Sunday and the historic Selma to Montgomery March. Every House Democrat is co-sponsoring the reintroduction of the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. The bill is named after the late Congressman and civil rights activist John Lewis. Democrats say the bill aims to combat modern-day voter suppression and ensure equal ballot box access.
Voting rights is not a Democratic issue or Republican issue. It's an American issue. And we should all stand behind the John Robert Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act.
Republicans have signaled their opposition to the bill in the past. They argue the proposed changes are unnecessary and strip away rights from the states. This bill is likely dead on arrival, with Republicans controlling both chambers. What happened the night 4 University of Idaho students were killed inside their home in Moscow? Newly unsealed text messages between the 2 surviving roommates paint a terrifying picture. Within minutes of the murders, roommate 1 calls 3 of the victims with no answer. She then texted the other surviving roommate, "No one is answering. I'm really confused right now." They also reference a ski mask. Prosecutors have requested to use the texts as evidence. And multiple Chinese hackers are now facing U.S. criminal charges for allegedly causing millions of dollars worth of damages to several U.S. entities and in some cases for profit. The Justice Department making the announcement saying the hackers targeted federal and state agencies, U.S. companies, municipalities, and critics of the Chinese government. This is the first major hacking-related national security case brought under President Trump's Justice Department. Sanctuary cities are in the hot seat on Capitol Hill. Lawmakers say they want to hold accountable the mayors of Boston, Chicago, Denver, and New York City for refusing to cooperate with federal immigration authorities. Our Jan Jeffcoat spoke with former FBI Special Agent in Charge and head of the Chicago Police Department, Jody Weiss.
Chicago's mayor has even doubled down on his policies, which I know has riled up residents, especially because he made the comment, citizens are not the priority. As the former Chicago police superintendent, what's your thoughts on this?
You know, that's astounding, Jan. I mean, back when I was superintendent, yes, Chicago was a sanctuary city, but we didn't have the influx of illegal migrants coming across the border into Chicago. So I'm astounded that these mayors refuse to cooperate with ICE. My experience, most time these criminals are preying on individuals from their same type of communities, the Black and Hispanic communities. So it just begs the question, mayors, why do you not want these individuals out of your city and out of the country? But Jan, the attitudes of these mayors have to change. You go back to March 1st, you have the mayor of Boston, who was simply offering her condolences to the family of an individual who was trying to stab people. I was horrified to hear that. The off-duty cop, thank God, intervened and he stopped this potential multiple stabbing event. But the mayor's first words were comfort to this offender's family.
The illegal migrant's family, not to the victim's family, the illegal migrant's family.
Right. But she almost referred to him as the victim. And how about addressing the hero who stopped this? Yes, sadly, an individual died, but he died because of the consequences of his own actions. So these mayors have got to get on board.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the meantime, I want to talk to you about FBI Director Kash Patel. He is fulfilling, his laundry list of sweeping promises in his first full week in charge of the agency, trying to get rid of agents and officials who are not on board with the new administration's vision and agenda. Headlines the media outlets really tried to take advantage of was when Patel mentioned he wanted to change the physical fitness standards of the FBI and even suggested some MMA training, which you thought was a great idea.
You know, I actually do like it. I probably wouldn't have made it part of my first call to the field offices, but I like the idea. Back decades ago when I was at Quantico, we learned arrest techniques and we learned defensive tactics, but that was kind of a one and done. Most fights will end up on the ground, so it just makes sense to me to incorporate some MMA training, maybe Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, to give the agents options besides strikes and weapons. For example, if properly applied, a naked choke or an arm bar can help gain compliance without having to use pepper spray or use a baton. And I think more importantly, this type of training can boost the confidence and the safety for the agents. And like Yogi Berra said, baseball, 90% mental, 50% physical. I think that applies in all sports. Yeah. So, yeah, I know the chokeholds have gotten bad press, and they've been banned by a lot of departments, but as someone who's been sprayed with pepper spray and has been choked out, if you give me the option of those two, I'll take being choked out anytime. It's far less painful. But one key point, you can't introduce this at Quantico and be done with it. It's got to be part of the ongoing training for the agents, much like firearms, and it's got to be incorporated throughout their career. But I like the idea, gets people in better shape. You can survive a critical incident if you're in better shape. So let's see how it works out.
Former FBI Special Agent in Charge and head of the Chicago Police Department, Jody Weiss. Great to see you, sir. Have a great week.
Thank you, Jan.
Thank you.
Job creation in the private sector was much lower than expected last month. ADP reports companies added 77,000 new jobs in February. Analysts expected they would add 148,000. The figure is also significantly lower than the 186,000 added in January. It's the latest sign of a potential economic slowdown, with concerns that President Trump's tariffs could stoke inflation. Developing now, some shoppers now standing up to Target in a new 40-day boycott to challenge its removal of DEI initiatives. Atlanta-based Reverend Jamal Bryan is urging consumers to stop shopping at the retailer. The boycott began earlier this week. It is expected to continue until April 17th. Nearly 30% of parents of kids up to 8 years of age say their children have used AI for learning, and 61% of parents said their kids' use of AI had no impact on their critical thinking skills, according to a new survey from Common Sense Media. The Fact Check team's Janae Bowens is back to discuss. So for advocates, it's often seen as a learning tool. Is that what many kids in this age group are using AI for?
Yeah, so Dee Dee, 39% of parents of children ages 5 to 8 said their kids use AI to learn about school-related material. 33% to learn critical thinking skills, and 24% of children use AI for creative content like writing short stories or making art.
And those are the positives. Experts have raised concerns. On the other side, what are the potential dangers?
Yeah, so I got my hands on a report from the American Academy of Pediatrics that shows several potential dangers of AI for kids, including AI-generated content, advancing stereotypes and falsehoods. There are also privacy, bullying, and fraud concerns. AI can be used to make false or distorted images of children, and deep fakes and voice cloning can be used to threaten kids. Now, the benefits: AI is a valuable tool for learning. It can foster creativity and motivate and engage kids in new ways. Parents must talk to their children about how to use AI safely.
Yeah, I know this is a discussion that is not going away. Janae, thank you. And for more on this Fact Check team topic, including links to their sources, scan the QR code on your screen or visit thenationaldesk.com. Still to come, our team of correspondents breaks down this week in Washington, from President Trump and Elon Musk setting their sights on the Department of Education to crypto executives tackling key regulation issues.
And welcome back. Our Washington Bureau covers the nation's capital every day, and our team of correspondents reports on the important issues facing the country and how they impact you. President Trump and Elon Musk's downsizing of government continuing this week, with the Department of Education reportedly set to be gutted. National correspondent Matt Galka, what is President Trump planning and why?
Yeah, Steve, it's no secret that President Trump has wanted to get rid of the Department of Education. He said it on the campaign trail last year, and he's said it since he's been sworn into office. And now the wheels for that seem to be in motion. Now, that also follows the blueprint of the controversial Project 2025 that Democrats were main issue of their campaign last year, and Donald Trump tried to distance himself. Well, that has kind of laid out the roadmap to get rid of the Department of Education, and that includes moving some of the department's responsibilities to other agencies, like the Office of Civil Rights would move over to the Department of Justice. And really what the Department of Education mostly does is it manages a lot of student loans, more than $1 trillion of that. That would move over to the Treasury under that 2025 plan. But doing this all through executive order, the tricky part going forward is really just how far that executive order can go. The Department of Education was established by Congress, so it would have to be done away with by Congress, and that would mean getting 60 votes in the Senate. Now, that's not likely, with Republicans having 53 seats over there, and it's an issue that Democrats have opposed. And when asked about it this past week, House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries, he said, well, if you want to get rid of the Department of Education, bring it to Congress, bring it to the floor. And then he also said that the president must like losing in court, because that's exactly where this would wind up. So still a long way to go in doing this, but the wheels are definitely in motion.
Meanwhile, national correspondent Atra El-Nashar, President Trump gathered crypto executives for a summit Friday. You spoke to the chief policy officer for Coinbase, who told you about one key topic that executives wanted to discuss with the president.
I think as long as the areas that need regulation are clarified, you have perimeters around them in terms of what should be regulated and what shouldn't, most of this activity will be like the activity on the internet, where people have broad scope of freedom to kind of decide how they want to operate.
So, Atra, is regulation the only topic the crypto executives are raising with President Trump?
Not at all. It's certainly important, as crypto right now is sort of like the Wild West. But there's also banking. That's a huge issue for the industry right now because a lot of banks are under pressure to essentially not provide just basic services for the industry. Faryar Shahzad, who is the chief policy officer for Coinbase, who I spoke to, said that he had folks on his payroll who couldn't get brokerage accounts, who couldn't get mortgages because of this issue. So that's something that was certainly top of mind during that summit. Also, a strategic crypto reserve is something that the president wants to establish. And something that really ruffled feathers in the industry is that the president wants that to include more than just Bitcoin, right? I think when a lot of people think of crypto, they think Bitcoin, but there's been all types of other cryptos that have come out. Doge actually was one of them, but now we think of something totally different when we think of Doge. Ethereum, a whole host of other cryptos, and the president saying he wanted to include those others really worried a lot of folks in the industry because those don't have the same stability associated with them. So this, again, is like the Wild West, and these folks coming together at the White House, regardless of party, right? This is becoming a bipartisan issue, was the first step toward putting some perhaps legitimacy on what was once a fringe issue.
And national correspondent Christine Frizzell, the Trump White House touting billions in savings for Americans following the administration's early deregulation efforts. Talk a bit about what the White House is celebrating and what critics are saying.
Yeah, here in Washington, it's known as cutting red tape. In other words, making it easier for businesses to do what they want without these rules that are sometimes very restrictive, called regulations. The bottom line here, if President Joe Biden imposed it, there's a good chance Donald Trump is going after it. He says he's removed regulations. He's going after fossil fuel regulations. He's allowing federal lands to be drilled upon now. So it's really interesting. He says he's already saved $180 billion, in other words, $2,100 for a family of four. Supporters say, you know what, this is good. When we have the Biden administration telling us we have to rely more on renewables like solar and wind and EVs, well, guess what? The batteries for EVs, along with wind turbines and solar panels, the majority of those products are actually made in China. So supporters say, you know what, this makes us less likely to rely on China. Of course, there are a lot of critics worried about cutting regulations, what it will do to clean air, clean water, supervising and regulating food and making sure it's safe to eat. So this debate is going to be huge as we move forward in the weeks ahead.
Christine, Audra, Matt, thank you all for your hard work and great reporting. Back to you.
Despite the drug's popularity, people taking Ozempic and Wegovy may be putting themselves at an elevated risk of irreversible vision loss. That's according to a new study in JAMA Ophthalmology. The complication isn't common, and the authors say more research is needed. Their working hypothesis is that rapid blood sugar changes caused by the medications could be contributing to eye complications.
It's a type of nerve damage or nerve injury, we would put it in that category, and it's linked to blood flow changes.
Additional risk factors for the condition include smoking, diabetes, and high blood pressure. If you notice any vision changes on any medication, you should see your eye doctor right away. Cases of whooping cough and hepatitis C are spiking in Pittsburgh, along with tick and foodborne illnesses. From 2023 to 2024, whooping cough cases in Allegheny County jumped almost 5,000%, while national cases saw a 400% increase. Whooping cough cases across the U.S. were lower during and immediately after the pandemic. Vaccinations can help prevent the infection, but protection decreases over time. Wild Coast Raw is recalling some of its frozen cat food products over possible bird flu contamination. The recall includes 16 and 24-ounce containers of the company's boneless, free-range chicken formula sold in Oregon and Washington. The company issued a similar recall last month after 2 cats died. No human cases have been linked to the product and have been reported, but people can become infected if the virus gets into their nose, mouth, or their eyes. Coming up, hundreds of thousands worth of guitars stolen, how the store is dealing with a drastic loss. Plus, a viral video leads to an arrest, the unusual situation that injured a boy while riding a horse. The National News Desk team of reporters is bringing you the headlines from coast to coast. We're taking the pulse of America, and we start in Seattle, Washington, where thieves stole thousands of dollars worth of instruments from a music store.
When you start thinking about 25, 30, 40 guitars stolen, it's a real serious hit.
Glenn Cannon, an employee at Studio Instrument Rental, still in disbelief of what the thieves targeted.
They came in and grabbed what was lightest, fastest, and probably the most defensible, which was guitars. They got about $100,000 worth of our guitars.
Glenn says the thieves busted the back door open, took the guitars and other equipment, and took off in one of their warehouse's trucks. But luckily, the truck was found by police a few blocks away.
What they did literally was pop this entire locking system out. This was just an empty hole.
It's a loss that Glenn says they've never experienced before.
I think this is the first time anything of this magnitude has ever happened. We've had small pieces of equipment go missing, but never a theft like this. This is a pretty big hit. Not only do we have to replace what we lost, but we're scrambling to fulfill our orders to artists who we've promised to take care of, and we will.
Just an awful situation. In Northern California, Daly City police arrested a woman they say pulled the tail of a horse, causing the 5-year-old rider to be thrown off. Look at this video. Officers were able to identify her with the help of the community when this video went viral online.
Seemingly our rides are almost always safe, and that just was that situation where it was just an unforeseen circumstance that no one would think someone would walk up and grab a horse's tail.
We're told x-rays reveal the boy had swelling in his right ankle. And in Moscow, Ohio, residents remember the day multiple deadly tornadoes touched down, destroying the town 13 years ago. Longtime Mayor Tim Cedar says the town is still recovering.
Everything from where we're standing behind me, almost every home was gone. And you can see some have been rebuilt, some haven't.
Cedar says that 6 months later, there were only 10 families left in town. We're told more people are settling in the community again. Still ahead, the stories making headlines next week, including North Carolina eyeing relief, the millions in funding they could receive following Hurricane Helene. Plus, moving from tennis to basketball, the WNBA team, Olympian Serena Williams, is putting her name behind. Looking ahead to stories making headlines this week, the North Carolina Senate approved the first major relief bill since October for Hurricane Helene recovery. If the vote passes in the House, $530 million would be added to the fund. Also, Serena Williams moving from the tennis court to the basketball court. The legendary tennis star is now a team owner in the WNBA. Williams is joining the Toronto Tempo, an expansion franchise set to debut in 2026. She'll handle merchandise, collaborations, and jersey designs. And also, a total lunar eclipse will be visible in Washington state for the first time since 2022. On March 13th, the blood moon will be visible from Washington state for over an hour. In honor of International Women's Day, Mattel has released a new collection of Barbie dolls. The new dolls are part of the Role Model collection that features 4 new sports-related dolls. They feature U.S. Olympic gold gymnast Jordan Chiles and Jade Carey. The collection also features former Australian professional tennis champions Yvonne Goolagong and Ash Barty. The dolls are not for sale. That'll be all for us on this edition of the weekend edition of the National News Desk, America's News Now. Don't forget, you can catch us live from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time. Check your local listings. You can also watch us online and catch up with the latest headlines on thenationaldesk.com. Thanks for watching the weekend edition of the National News Desk. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and from all of us here, have a great week.